Hello and welcome, PJ Artists. My name is Tony Cruz, here co-founder of the PJ Marketing Podcast, and I'm joined today with a very special guest. It is David with Sunstone. He's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Sunstone. And I'm super excited to have you. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, super happy. Thanks for the invite, and I'm real excited for the conversation we're going to have today.
Yeah, we're going to have a killer conversation actually, because we're going to be going over the 5 things that you want to know about when you're first starting out your PJ business, because starting out oftentimes very difficult. And there's so many, like, where do I go? What do I buy? What do I need first? All those different things. And to me, when I think about where do I start out in the business, I start out at like, okay, what are the main cores of how am I going to complete this? I don't know if you want to call it task or this job, but what are the tools I need to complete this business? And the main tool you need is your welder.
Right.
So take it away, David. What do you feel like starting out someone should look for in their business? Like, what are those few key things they should be looking for when they first are getting into the business?
Yeah, perfect. Well, like you said, there is a lot to owning and operating a business. I know this from my work at Sunstone and from other ventures that I have as well, investments in businesses. And you've really got to narrow it down to what is your core competency. And that's how you distinguish yourself. That's how you compete with the competition. In permanent jewelry, it really comes down to that welder. That's got to be the core. That's the engine that makes your vehicle go. Without that, you can't really fuse metal. You need the welder. And so closing links, you've got to have a welder. That's the core of what you need. Now, starting up, running, and making a business thrive, there is a lot more that goes into it. You've got to have competency. You've got to have, inventory on hand. You've got to have finances to make it all work. And we can pick apart all of those, but the biggest one, when you whittle it all down, it all starts and ends with the welder that you have on hand, right?
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right, because I was actually at an event last year where I witnessed a PJ artist actually do 400 welds in literally 24 hours. And before she went to the event, she had a machine that people dubbed the unbranded. Okay. And then she had picked up a Sunstone welder, and she actually picked up the more basic version. I think you call it the Zap.
Yeah, Zap's our entry level. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the entry level one. And I watched her knock out 400 bracelets without it missing a tick.
Oh, I love it.
And so that's something that, to me, when I look at what someone needs to really get started, it is absolutely the welder. Now, when it comes to the welder, when we're starting up, what is the difference between, like, what should somebody be looking for in a welder? Like, what are the core things that they should be looking for in a welder?
I think luckily the market's pretty well defined. What are you looking for? You need a welder that caters to what you're trying to do. Not to get too far off of this, there are products I see people doing using soldering irons. I see people using torches. I see people using their laser welders. And yes, it can do the job, but it's not efficient. Luckily for anybody listening, the market's defined itself, and there are welders that are designed and dedicated for permanent jewelry. So luckily for you guys, that's not a hard question to answer. Now, when it comes to that, you mentioned already the unbranded. That is a welder that is very popular in the permanent jewelry world. I myself personally would not use it. I'm very familiar with it. It's actually a knockoff. If nobody knows the history of this, and I've been competing with that welder for probably 17 years. It's a knockoff of a welder that was made by a company from Germany. It's actually called the Primotech, and it was originally made for orthodontics, for welding up appliances and orthodontics. And it was a good machine. It's the technology though that it's built upon is 20 years old, 20 plus years. And not only that, you're dealing with 20-year-old product, but it's also a Chinese copy knockoff version of that 20-year-old product. So a lot has happened in 20 years. Look at any aspect of the world. So much has changed in 20 years. That product is living in the past. And if you're buying it from an unbranded, you don't know who's building it. There's not a good reputation. There's not a lot of support. And if something goes wrong, you can't really pass that on to anybody. So my own personal recommendation, and this isn't just because I'm with Sunstone, this would be my recommendation if I was doing something else, would be to stay away from that machine. Now, I understand why people do go to that machine. For $500, you can get started, and that's an attractive thing. And so with that aspect, knowing that there is a cheap option that could be used to get you started, that's where the Zap product comes in. You already mentioned the Zap. You saw your friend do the Zap welder. That one, we've got our basic Zap, and we've priced it at $9.99. So it is a little bit more than that unbranded. That unbranded usually goes for $500 or so, give or take. But for at $1,000 price point, you're getting a USA made product from a company that will stand behind it, from a company that you can pick up the phone and talk to my engineers, you can talk to my sales rep, you can talk to my support team. If you're in the right Facebook group, you could even be having a Facebook chat with our CEO, Jonathan Young. He loves hanging out there and chatting with customers. And so, yes, it's double the price. We're going from $500 to $1,000, but there's a lot of value in that extra upsell to get into that Zap. So at a minimum, if you're kind of wanting to test the waters, I would push you to get a name brand machine, and that Zap is going to be the most affordable welder that you can get yourself into and started your business with. The Zap is designed to get you, at least make you consider before you buy the unbranded. It's a $1,000 price point. I was going to say, we've got two other models of welders that I would recommend as well. We've got the Zap Plus, which builds upon the Zap. And we've also got the Impulse, which is really the welder that made this all happen. And just a few months ago, we launched the new version of the Zap. So the original Zap was, I think it's about a 7-year-old product. And it was always our budget. We sold, it wasn't even for PJ. It was for our mainstream jewelers. It was for our circuit board guys. It was for our hobbyists. Knowing how big and important permanent jewelry is, we redid the Impulse completely, and it's still called the Impulse, but that's the Impulse that we launched this year, 2024, brand new, and a fully loaded feature set specific to permanent jewelry.
That's awesome. And I can't emphasize this, and and by the way, I'm in no way, shape, or form, for those of you listening, being paid by anybody to say this. But what really blew me away was, in fact, last week, I got on the phone with Jonathan Young. I knew who he was, but he took my call. And I was like, that's impressive. For such a large company to have that personal touch means more to me than saving $500. And I can't tell you, especially if you've been in Facebook groups a lot lately, you're starting to see a lot of people struggle at events. Oh, I'm at an event and this is going on, that's going on, this is going on, that's going on. And in fact, I saw, from somebody who's an okay name brand company, but they were saying, hey, I bought this machine from such and such builder. Does anybody know how to get in contact with them? I'm like, what? But I will say, you guys are so relevant in the industry that you are in all the Facebook groups. You are there to help. And when you're in a pinch, having a company like that is worth that extra money. Yep. So for those of you listening, when I've built businesses, and I've built many $1 million businesses, been a part of $1 million business building, and I've built many businesses myself. And I've always found that if you're looking for the cheapest way to be in the business, you're only looking to exist. If you're looking to actually go out and build a sustainable, thriving business, you have to partner yourself with a company that's willing to back you. And that's where, to me, I was super stoked to have you on the podcast, because, Sunstone to me is that company. Now, I know for a lot of you, we're discussing the different things that you should definitely take into consideration when starting your business. And, the welder's one of them. But one thing, that's been talked about a lot lately is market saturation. Is the market saturated? And I couldn't think of a better person to ask than the person who's actually making and selling the machines.
Yes.
So I guess from your standpoint, what do you feel about market saturation?
Well, I don't think we're saturated at all. I think there is so much more to be seen, so much more to be done. And it's not just me being the VP of sales and giving you what I want you to hear, right? I've got a case in point. I've got a very close friend of mine who's going through some very hard times, single momming at this point, going through a divorce, has no financial support from her partner. and I might have got my own family to take care of, right? I'm not going to take care of her family, but what I do have access to is welders and chain and training and supplies. And I said, look, like I can foot this bill to get you going. And so we're now 3-4 years into PJ, right? And even longer if you consider, I think my very first bracelet I ever heard about was probably more like 8 or 9 years ago. Someone wanted to do this. And I was like, I don't know why you would want to do that, but we can do it. So it's been around a long time, right? The last 2, maybe 3 years, there's been a huge explosion. But so I'm saying, well, I'm coming in 3 years post explosion, and I'm saying there's still a market. In the last 2 months is when I got involved with this friend of mine and set her up and footed the bill. And it's been so good for her in the last 2 months. She's now, taking care of herself, taking care of her 2 kids, covering costs, feeding, having food in the pantries, and she's booking out events. She texted me last week and said, hey, she had a Friday night event, private party at the customer's house, and did $1,300 in her, 4-hour, 5-hour visit. And this is something, she's a brand new startup. This is her, she did a few parties with friends and neighbors who she could learn and mess up with. This was her first real party after probably 5 weeks of practice, and came home with $1,300. Like, it's not saturated. People can still start up, and this is not a bogus story. This is live and recent as of, last week. So if you want to go after it, you absolutely can. And if you need it to survive, you can absolutely do that. If you want to push it and grow it and thrive, you can do that as well. It really is up to you and how much you're willing to put into it. Is it saturated? I don't think it is. And is there a better time to buy? I don't think there is either. Because if I go back to it, when the PJ community found the Impulse and was going off of that, it was the only option available. And at that time, we were pricing everything at $2,400 or so, give or take. You've now got $1,000 option. So your ability the barrier to entry to this industry just got lowered by more than half. Pick up a Zap or a Zap Plus, you can get started for half the startup cost. And that just means you're quicker to ROI and profitability.
For sure. And that's something, when I look at market saturation, I love when people say, oh, my market's saturated. I thrive on that. Like, from a business building standpoint, all I do is build businesses. That's my passion. And for me, I'm here to say, and from my opinion on market saturation, it's not saturated at all. I could tell you right now, I'm a marketing agency. It's really funny because the last thing people think about is marketing their business. The first thing to think about is what chains, what jump rings, what machine, all that. And to me, it's backwards. How awesome would it be to feel confident about buying the top of the line PJ machine from Sunstone, knowing that you have 5 events already pre-booked?
Yeah.
And it all starts with the marketing. And if you have your marketing on point, you have your business plan on point, you're going to be so confident to say, hey, David, sell me your most expensive machine. And not from most expensive standpoint, but sell me the machine that I'm never going to have to replace.
Yeah. Love it.
And that's my passion. And for those of you who are like, okay, well, Tony, is it saturated? The way I define it is by Google Analytics. We all know the famous thing, Google. I can go into Google Keyword Planner and see the search history on that, and it's still at an all-time high.
Yep.
So
Google Trends, that's another one to follow, right?
Yeah.
Like it peaks, you think you're at the peak, and then you come look at it 6 months later. That peak was a low, right? We're now even higher up on that.
Yeah. And that's how I define things. So if you're like really nervous about PJ, go ask. I dare somebody to go ask 5 people, random people, hey, have you ever heard of permanent jewelry? 90% of the time, they're going to say no.
Yep.
The people who know about permanent jewelry are permanent jewelry artists. So I have an old, and I steal this from Tony Robbins, what you focus on expands.
I love that.
And that's where, when you're looking at the market, I think it's there for the taking. And I think those that make the right alliances when it comes to who's going to be in my corner, when it comes to the machine, when it comes to the products, when it comes to the services, things like that, and the support and the training in the community. Like, we just did a big event a month ago in Destin, and I kid you not, every person from that event was almost doing 6 figures in their first year. Again, surrounding yourself with that right culture. So that's where I think, guys, to me, it starts with A, the machine, B, the marketing, and C, having the plan. So to close it out, why should somebody choose Sunstone? I ask all my guests this, so don't feel on the spot, but why Sunstone? Tell me why.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that platform. I love that opportunity to speak to ourselves. I think there's every reason to choose Sunstone. If we're talking about the welder being the core competency and that engine that makes your business run, Sunstone has been around for a long time. We are micro welding experts. We're not just dealing and focusing on a customer base of permanent jewelers, although we are. There is definitely hours and hours every day put into how do we grow, how do we take care of this market, how do we continue to foster it. And we've put a lot of effort and resources and time. We're developing new products we've never had before. We're organizing and running the Permanent Jewelry Academy. We have the PJX conference. We've had you there at that and being a player and a partner in that one. And it's a conference just to learn and to grow and to make this industry collaborative and helpful and make sure that everyone's living up to the standards. Sunstone is a big company. We are about 60 employees. I've been here for more than 17 years. I was employee number 5. And so when you work and partner with Sunstone, you've got a full team behind you. We've been making this type of welder for longer than a lot of the other permanent jewelry welder manufacturers have even, been around. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of expertise that comes from working with Sunstone. I've got people and, layers and layers of people who you can call in and talk to with questions, from as simple as before you buy the welder, hey, what would you tell me to do? After you buy the welder, how would you change your settings? There's a lot of support that comes into it. And more than anything, we want to do right by people. We're successful when our customers are successful. Mm-hmm. I don't sell welders knowing that it's going to become an expensive paperweight. I want to see you guys using it. I want to see customers having success. And what you said earlier at your event in Destin, right? Of how many of those people had a 6-figure year. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's money in this market. You don't need to sell yourself short, and you don't need to sell your customers short. Yeah, sure, you could make the same money welding a bracelet, but man, if one thing goes wrong with the wrong welder, the liability you're going to get hit with isn't worth the minimal upfront savings that you're getting by partnering with the wrong partner. And so even if you don't buy the Sunstone, I would encourage you to give us a call, talk to us, and don't try to say, hey, I know Dave. Just talk to anybody and just call them up and see the story. You don't need to be my best friend to get the Sunstone experience. Call in. Our team is going to take care of you. And if you don't end up buying a Sunstone welder, we're still here to listen and help in any way that we can. And that's going to be our commitment to anybody, is that, we're good people trying to do right by everybody, and we're all in this together. And if I can help you, then I know that it'll work out for me in the end. Yeah.
And you hit the nail right on the head, the Sunstone experience. Far too often we base our decisions on price instead of on value. Yep. And most successful people build their business based on value, not on price. So, and that's something I teach and coach on consistently. So, I mean, with that, David, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me today. And to those listeners out there, definitely reach out to Sunstone. They're an amazing company, a driving force in the industry. And we are so excited to have you on the podcast. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right. You have a good one.